Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Wednesday afternoon in September. Super excited to have you. We are going to have a lot of fun today and talk about some really amazing work that some of our partners have been doing, leveraging digital communities to help improve outcomes for students and for their institution in lots of different and creative ways. So I'm excited to share that with you. I am Katie Kapler. I am co-founder and CEO at InScribe. We'll talk in a little bit about what InScribe is for anybody who's not familiar with the company. And I am joined today by a couple of my colleagues. I'm going to have them introduce themselves today. Danielle.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. I am joining the conversation as the Q&A moderator. So if you have any questions, you will see me in the chat. I will also drop links to any of the resources that we talk about today. And I will pass it over to Aaron.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Knox. I'm InScribe's Chief Revenue Officer, and I'll kind of jump on at the tail end of the webinar to share a few things. But thanks for joining.
Awesome. And of course, we would love to know who we have in our audience. So if you want to take a minute to introduce yourself in the chat, please do so. You can let us know where you're coming in from, what the weather's like today. The three of us are in Colorado, Denver and Denver adjacent, and it is a beautiful sunny day with like a hint of fall in the air, wouldn't you say? Like a little chill in the air. We're getting there.
Yes.
But anyway, thank you so much for being here. So, oh, well, I skipped over this. So there we are. So I mentioned that we're all from InScribe. So for those of you who aren't familiar, InScribe is a virtual community platform. So our goal is to help institutions create digital spaces where their students can go to connect with each other, sometimes connect with faculty, staff, coaches at the college or university. But really the idea is that if we can create a more flexible, on-demand space for these individuals, then they're more likely to reach out to each other and find the support that they need when they need it. As you might imagine, we work with a lot of non-traditional students. So a lot of students who are learning online, returning to school, maybe commuting to and from school. Not exclusively, but that population obviously has less access to peers, has less access to services. And so we wanted to come in and help fill that gap for them. One thing that will come to learn about us is that we are very much human first, tech enabled. So we embrace technology. We love all the advancements that have happened with AI, but at least for the work that we do, we don't want AI to be replacing humans in the conversations and relationships that they're building. There are plenty of reasons and places where that might be important, and some people that are doing great work there. But when we look at the outcomes that we see in our communities, we know that it's very much about the fact that students are talking to one another, that they're meeting people, that they're building these human connections. And so that's always going to be the forefront of what we want to foster in our spaces. And if we can leverage technology to do that better, faster, more efficiently, then we will absolutely do that. We're not going to do a demo of the platform today, so I think we'll even mention this again later. If you are interested in a deeper dive of InScribe, we can certainly arrange that. But for today, we're going to kind of talk high level and give some examples of what some other folks have done. Why do we think the community works? Well, and this gets back to the whole human first concept. So there's a lot of things that go into student retention and persistence. It's not a one size fits all solution for any institution or any student. But what we see and the building blocks that we drive to support are the ones that you see here. How do we build a stronger sense of belonging among students? And how do we give them access to social capital while they're working through their education journey? And studies have shown time and time again that these two foundational elements are what will oftentimes drive students, particularly non-traditional students, to be more successful in their learning. And it totally makes sense, right? If you come into a situation and you're uncomfortable, you don't feel like you belong, you don't know where to go when you need help, like you already have a bunch of things stacked against you that when the going gets tough, like those are going to work against you and can push you off to the side or off track. So if we can counterbalance that and say, hey, you actually absolutely should be a part of this program. There are lots of people that are studying that are just like you with similar backgrounds and aspirations and have had success. And here's your network of people that you can trust and reach out to when you have questions or when you need support. Like that will make such a transformational difference. And so that's really what our communities are designed to do. Oh, I should have mentioned, if there are any questions as we go along, please pop them in the chat. Danielle already mentioned she's going to keep an eye on that, so we'll answer those as we go, I should say.
Yeah.
Danielle, is there anything you want me to address in the chat?
Not quite yet, but the only thing that I would add to that is Zoom defaults to just
Thank you.
posting to the host and the panelists. And so if you wouldn't mind changing that to everyone, if you feel comfortable. Otherwise, feel free to send those questions directly to me, and I would be happy to make sure we get those answered. And then the other thing is, when you join a little bit late, I know we're all moving between meetings, so we have a few people that are just joining us, but when you join a little bit late, you can't see the posts that were already in the chat. And so please, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about why you're here today, we would like to make sure that we answer any questions as it aligns to your role and what you do at your institution.
Fantastic. Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so a little bit more about why we're here. Higher ed in general has a retention challenge. Not every institution, but it's pretty common when we talk to schools that of the things that the needles that they want to move, this is always one of them. And it's a particular challenge in the online space. Historically, about 65% of people who are learning online don't complete their degree, or non-traditional students. And that number actually might even be a little bit higher today. And we all know why. These are individuals who have a ton going on. Education is one aspect of a very busy life that includes children and employment and other family responsibilities. So they're fitting their education journey, although it is a priority, it's not the only priority that they're managing. I think when you come into an education space with that many responsibilities, it can be hard, you know, even in their head, we have this image of a student as like, I'm 18 and I'm on campus and this is the one thing I'm focused on. So even when you come into an online space, I think our online students think the other students that are in their program are not dealing with as many of the challenges that they're dealing with. They feel very, I'm the only one, maybe I shouldn't be here, imposter syndrome sneaks in. So we have to do extra work to combat that with them and help them understand that this is absolutely the right place and that they can achieve the goals that they want. And then, of course, just the isolation that comes with online learning, where you're not in a class. You can't just turn to the person next to you with a quizzical look on your face and see that they also were like, hey, I don't really understand what, you know, the professor just said. You know, if you don't understand something, that experience is happening on your own and in an isolated way. So we need to break down those barriers of isolation as well. Online, of course, we talked about this a little bit already, but when we think about how we then want to support students in online, many of the schools that we talk to, particularly those who, you know, are primarily a traditional institution and are now migrating or expanding their online offerings, they also face some sort of unique challenges, which is historically, the way that we support students can be very fragmented. And when you're on campus, although that is inconvenient, it's not as big of a deal because the student can sort of wander around campus and figure out, or ask somebody, you know, and kind of figure out where they need to go. When you're online, that fragmentation becomes really complicated and confusing, and in some ways sort of insurmountable for those individuals. The other thing that's unique about online is you have to honor the flexibility of time and space in all the things that you do. So it's not enough to just have the learning available online, but the support and the services and the ability to connect also has to have an asynchronous element to it, a multi-time zone element to it. And that's a difficult transition for a lot of institutions. And then finally, kind of leaning on that sense of isolation, there just aren't as many opportunities for online students to connect with others around them. They probably have some work they're doing in their classes that are geared toward group work or collaborating with others. But if you think about your own education journey, how much of your peer relationships and relationship building was that? And how much of it was the people you ate lunch with, the people you were in the dorm with, the people you're in the library with, right? That whole piece gets lost for our online students, where some of those are the most important and the strongest relationships that we build. So that is where the concept of a peer community comes in. So a peer community is very much what it sounds like. It is a virtual space that sits above the classroom and brings together students either across an entire program or often across an entire college or university, and gives them a place to talk to one another. It is asynchronous first. So it's, again, honoring that concept of flexibility of time and space. And it is designed to be a safe place to go. So because this isn't a separate social media system, we're not sending kids off to Facebook or Discord, or students, I should say, off to Facebook or Discord. It's integrated into the school platforms. You have visibility into what is going on in these spaces, which by its nature then makes it a more positive, proactive, safe place for people to talk to one another. And then the other sort of advantage of these spaces is that they really function as knowledge repositories. And what that really means is you might have one student that asked 10 amazing questions. And historically, if that was through email, that one student got 10 amazing answers. But when you do that in a community, the amazing questions and answers that this one individual generated are now visible to all of your learners. So you're democratizing access to information across a much broader group of people, which is great for them, but also great for you, because now you know the right answer is getting out there. And you're probably not answering that same question over and over again, one individual at a time. I will say, Danielle and Erin, you should just jump in and add anything if you want as we go. Any questions I should address, Danielle?
There aren't any questions at this point in time. I know most people are here to hear about some of the.
I know, they're like, stop talking about yourself.
How, how they're using the digital communities. So let's jump right into that. And I will just remind anyone that maybe is just joining us and hasn't heard, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat. It's a lot more fun when I'm interacting with people in there than me just posting things. So please, I will encourage you. We'll answer those questions.
Bring it on. Let us know what things you've tried, what you're worried about, what might be part of your strategic goals. Okay, so let's talk about some actual universities. One of our absolute favorites, Rio Salado College, I should say. If you're not familiar with Rio Salado, they're a community college down in Arizona. They have, I think, roughly 15,000 students. And what was unique about them is they started as a fully online community college. So even today, I think they have a few on ground and in person, but the vast majority of their learners are learning online. So that presented almost a double challenge for them, because we already have all of the components of online, which we talked about. And then because they're a community college, they have students who are, coming in and out, maybe just dropping in for a semester to get a particular credit. When you don't have that permanence of a student community, it can be hard for the students to feel connected to one another and feel connected to the institution. So they recognize that, and they really felt like that was something that was missing from their group. So we partnered with them to help them launch Rio Connect, which is a peer community that is across the entire college. So every student has access to this space. Not listed here, but I will say Rio was also the first partner that we had to really embrace the idea of bringing students into the process from day one. So through the whole community, as we were designing the community, naming the community, figuring out how the community was going to be moderated, we brought their student leadership group into those conversations, and they helped guide that process, which was amazing, because really that's what this community is, right? It's meant to be for students. And then they were the first partner that we really ran a direct evaluation of the impact of community on sense of belonging and peer connection. And you can see the results here. This is actually a study that we have generalized. So if it's something that you're interested in thinking about measuring at your institution and you're not quite sure how to go about it, let us know, because we have the the design of the study, the questions that you can ask students, and we're happy to share that whether you're a customer of ours or not. We think it's important to be able to understand these metrics with your learners. But so you can see here the impact that we saw on the levels of belonging. And the cool thing was it didn't take a semester or a year to achieve these goals. It was literally, here's where the students started, then they started participating in the community, and within 4 to 6 weeks, we saw a huge uptick in their sense of connection with each other and with the school as well. So really excited about that. Rio's gone on then to launch all different kinds of communities around things like academics and individual programs. So they have found ways to amplify the impact in smaller spaces as well. Questions?
No questions. I think the only thing that comes to mind for me is how do you measure belonging and persistence? Because we're going to talk about that a lot in the next couple of slides. And I think that you shared that, right? You shared a little bit about the study design, and if anybody would like access to that, they can email me. I dropped my email in the chat.
Yeah, and it's you know, to measure these things, they are self-reported measures, right? So you have to ask the student. But what we did is we partnered with a third-party research organization that helped design that study so that it would be appropriate and I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but you know, that the design felt like it would actually get to the heart of those measures with students and not lead them, you know, to the answers that we are necessarily looking for. Okay, so Tiger to Tiger is actually a similar story, but at a very different institution. So Fort Hays State University, Kansas, a more traditional school, has about, I'm going to forget now, 15 to 20,000 students, split roughly evenly between traditional in-person and fully online. In fact, the online is actually a little bit bigger for them, but it was something that they've been growing over the last decade or so. And Andrew Feldstein, who some of you may know, he's pretty active in the community, reached out to us because he saw during COVID, they did a lot of surveys of their students to understand how they were feeling and what was working for them. And it became very clear that the online students were, the in-person students were missing out on being together and talking to one another and that peer connection. And it essentially told them that the online students had been missing out on that forever. Like COVID didn't bring that to bear. That had been something that they had been sort of suffering with, let's say, for years and years and years, and just nobody really thought to ask or thought to explore it. So Andrew wanted to do something to change that. So we partnered with them. We launched the Tiger to Tiger community, again, peer community across the entire institution. And this was unique because it really welcomed in online and in-person students to work and talk with one another. Their in-person student population is more traditionally aged. Their online student population is more in that adult learner 25 plus category. But it was interesting to see them be able to talk to one another. We integrated it into Blackboard, so it was really easy to access. And this is one of Andrew's favorite posts, I think one of mine as well, when we first started working with them. And what I think this post shows more than anything, because you can see somebody essentially being vulnerable enough to say, not sure that I can do this and not sure I'm the right person to be taking this journey. And not only did 20 people respond, we don't have the responses there, but I'm sure you can imagine they were all one more encouraging than the other. But about 325 people also viewed that post. And what this story really means to me is not everybody that is in your community has the courage to be vulnerable, to raise their hand and say this. But many of them are feeling the same way. So all it takes is one person to express how they're feeling. And now 300 other people who may have been feeling that way, but were too embarrassed to say anything, can see this conversation and think about all the amazing benefit they get from that. I'm not the only one that feels this way. I see all these other people reaching out to support. Hey, maybe I can do it. So small changes that can have a big impact on a broad set of learners.
Katie, something that I think is really interesting about this and I want to look back at is,
this
was posted in 2021. So we're a few years away from that now. I wonder, because the post lives on indefinitely, right? We're not taking
it does.
Yeah. So I wonder how many students have actually went and viewed this post today.
I know. I think and yes, how many, and then what has been their journey, right? Can we go back to Andrew and sort of see what everybody's journey was? So it's a great point and a good one. Yeah, you don't have to take content down from your community. You can let it live on. So this great wisdom, impacts as many people as possible. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. Now we're going to talk about University of Maryland Global Campus. Very different type of institution, right? Fully online, tens of thousands of students, 8,000 students active worldwide. I think that was just in the PACE course. So overall, tens of thousands of students. If you're not familiar with UMGC, one of the things that's unique about them is they serve a large military population. So they really do have students in every time zone all around the world, learning, but also having incredible additional responsibilities outside of their education journey. So UMGC is extremely sensitive to meeting those students where they are, helping them feel connected. And they do all kinds of really cool things, especially around how the faculty interact with students and coaches. And we were honored to be able to be a part of that in the work that we did with them. So when we launched, we integrated the InScribe community into their PACE course. And what that is like, I can't remember what it stands for. It's the course everybody takes when they first start with UMGC, no matter how old you are or what program you're in, you go through PACE. And it's the course that teaches you how to learn online, essentially, and helps you develop those skills and the motivation. And so we integrated into that course and just gave students an organic place to talk to one another. And we had about 8,000 students come through PACE in the time that we did this pilot. And faculty were not required to participate. But as the experience went on, we saw more and more faculty voluntarily jumping into the community and giving really positive feedback to us about their experience. And you can see the outcomes really speak for themselves. So a huge jump in the number of students successfully completing the PACE course. And because that's a gateway course to everything else, it's really critical that students pass and have a positive experience. That's essentially going to set the stage for everything else they do going forward. The number of people getting an A was much higher. And we also saw a big increase in persistence. So like I said, not only did I pass this class, but I had a positive experience in it. It made me feel excited about learning. I met some people. That is obviously going to directly impact the number of students that then continue on to start their program and continue working forward. So, and with such a large number of learners, a 13% change is transformational, for them and economically and for retention and enrollment. So we really love this. I know you've also done some work with them. Danielle, would you add anything to that?
Well, I think one of the interesting things about this that we've learned from UMGC is the positivity from the faculty. And so I was going to ask you, because I think this comes up quite a bit, is what's the lift for either a faculty member or another staff member within the institution to have to, one, implement something like this, and then two, maintain it long term?
Yeah, such a good question. So I think I've said before that InScribe is, from a faculty perspective or from a support team perspective, the thing that seems the scariest before they implement it, and then their favorite tool ever after they implement it. Because the technical lift is very light. Our team is the team that are experts in community building and design. We don't expect you to do that. So we take on all those responsibilities for you, or partner with you on that. But essentially, we help guide that process during implementation. And then once it's live, think about it this way. You're not answering questions, not like a whole flood of new questions are coming in. You're going to get these questions anyway. You're just going to get them in individual emails, phone calls. Now we're just centralizing that conversation in one place. So you will actually save time and energy by doing this many-to-many model. And that's what we hear time and time again. Like, it's a couple hours a week managing the community, but I also got 4, 6, 8 hours back in my day to do other things. So I know it's hard to believe me when I say that, but if you really are interested, we can connect you with some of our partners who can tell that story as well. Okay, All right, so now quick conversation about Southern New Hampshire University. So sort of a peer to UMGC, a little bit bigger. Now we're talking about hundreds of thousands of learners around the world and around the country. Now SNHU's great because they had always had a focus on community building with students. They actually were using a different product before we partnered with them, but they just weren't seeing the participation and engagement in that product that they really felt like they should be seeing. So they knew the value could be there, but they hadn't quite cracked the nut and gotten the engagement, which is obviously table stakes, right? All this great impact on retention and belonging and everything. We will see that, but the first thing you got to do is get students into the community and start using it. So we partnered with them. The first thing we did is really focus on their student clubs. They do a ton of stuff to create clubs and programs for students that are learning online. So we moved all of that into the InScribe platform, integrated with their LMS, which happens to be D2L Brightspace, to create an easy entry point. I think they also have a portal integrated into the portal, and sort of rolled it out over time to these learners. And they saw amazing shifts in the amount of participation that we had going on. So you can see there 65% month over month increase. I don't have in front of me the specific numbers that drove that, but they went from 1,000-ish, some thousands of learners to multiple thousands of tens of thousands of students participating on a weekly basis in the platform. And then this 30% of students actively participating, you may look at that and think like, oh, only 30%. But if you think about a traditional online community, you have usually about 10 to 15, maybe 20% who are actively posting. And the vast majority of other folks are lurkers who are consuming content. So to start to get above 30% of people confident and comfortable with the space and willing to post is huge. And we see that growing, I think, day over day. And then really positive feedback from the students about how easy the platform was to use, how they preferred the design and the user experience. So what do I attribute this to is the simplicity of the platform, how easy it is to approach and engage, the fact that it was very clear what the community was for. We had a clear value proposition for students. So they knew what they were going to get when they went in there, and they knew why it would benefit them. And then that integration piece, you just can't underestimate how important it is for the community to meet students where they are. So that's one of the things that we do really, really well. We will integrate into all the places that your students are already going. So the community is coming to them. They don't have to remember that it exists over here and think about going over there. So those are some of the things. Now we continue to do studies with them, and I'm sure in the future we'll have more conversation around the impact on retention and persistence as well. Okay, last one, and then we'll get into a few other things, but University of North Texas has been partnering with us for several years, and they built a community that was somewhat similar to what they did at Fort Hays State University. So big community. They started with just their online students, but really wanted a place for students to talk to each other and a more effective way for their coaches to talk to their students. Because when you have tens of thousands of learners, it's hard for a coach to have a one-on-one conversation with every individual. And so we started by introducing it in the student orientation and onboarding process. We gave kind of free rein to the students to talk about whatever it is that they wanted to talk about. But we also engaged the coaches to push out some information to students, make them aware of opportunities like other orientation events and meetings or career planning fairs, things that were coming up. And the numbers there blew us away. So when we compared the student persistence in the fall, when we were working with them to the year before, we increased that rate of persistence by 13%. So if you think about what that means to that number of learners, that's a whole bunch of students who may have dropped out and not re-engaged. It's also a big impact on tuition revenue. It's very expensive to get a student into the university. So once they're there, let's do what we can to keep them moving forward. So, that benefits everybody, both economically and socially. All right, we're going to jump into something else, Danielle. So any questions about any of that?
Well, we talked about a variety of different institutions in regards to size, profile, etc. And when we talked about UMGC, I mentioned faculty because that was something that was on their slide. However, can you tell us a little bit about moderators in general? Because faculty are moderators across all communities. Can you maybe touch on that real quick?
Yeah, but that's a great question. So people ask that a lot. The moderators in your community are going to come from usually one of two places. So in these peer-to-peer communities, because they're above the course level most of the time, usually it's someone out of the student success organization. So maybe you already have student success coaches, advisors, other people that are leaders in the retention and student experience space. And they tend to be the people that would have been supporting these kinds of questions and conversations anyway, just maybe doing it through a different channel. So they will end up being the moderators in your community. But again, it is certainly not a full-time job. It's a couple hours a week, and it's kind of a less is more model for these spaces. Because remember that we're trying to encourage students to think about these communities as like my space that we own, and we can talk about what we want to talk in here. And the more that your moderators are posting and contributing content, the more students start to feel like, oh, this is your space to talk to me, not my space to talk to you or to talk to my peers. So they'll tend to get, the louder the moderators are, the quieter the students get. So we usually say, it's okay to put an announcement in once in a while. It's okay to jump in if a student needs your help, but otherwise just let them run with it and keep an eye on it, and really be more of an observer than a super active participant. Did that help?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, let me check time. Are we doing 45 or noon?
I think it's scheduled till noon, but I'm sure people would love that 15 minutes to transition. So, yeah, let's chug along.
So I'll touch on this. If you follow us on LinkedIn, we have a blog that we put out once a week, and the most recent blog was about our vision around this personalized persistence framework. And really what we mean is, I'm not going to go into super great detail. I don't know if you have a link to that blog, Danielle, that you could drop in. But really what this is meant to say is, again, student support and student engagement is not a one-size-fits-all, one modality-fits-all situation. We really need a multimodal approach. So maybe we're sending notifications to remind students that there are things coming up. Maybe we have an AI chatbot that students can interact with to ask questions. Maybe we have an InScribe community where I can talk to other people to get support. Or I have a coach that I can reach out to and schedule a one-on-one meeting. There's some combination of that that's going to make your students and your system thrive. What we aim to do is be a tool that integrates all of those methodologies so that they can work together rather than each layer having to work separately to achieve their goals. So if you read the blog or if you reach out to us, we can explain how InScribe itself touches on each of these layers of the framework, but also how we have the capacity to integrate other tools that might be working in this ecosystem so that we're working together and not just working side by side, and amplifying that positive impact.
We have a great question in the chat that's going to lead nicely into the features that you're going to share here in the next couple of slides.
Okay.
So does the platform surface responses automatically like an AI chatbot for common questions? And does that help or not help, given the idea is for students to feel like this is their space and not for an AI chatbot?
That is a great question. So the system, so we have a little technology assistant that lives in the community called Rosie. And so if a student starts to ask a question that has already been answered or the solution already exists, Rosie will pop up and say, hey, I think, sort of redirect the student over to where that solution exists. Rosie doesn't function as the entity providing the answer. she's more to say like, hey, Danielle, I think Aaron already asked this question over here. Can I redirect you to that area so you can see what he asked and what answer was given? So we're still reinforcing the idea that it was a human that asked the question initially, that it was a human being that ultimately provided that answer. So we like that. We think it gives you both the efficiency of the reuse of content while not sort of ignoring the fact that that content was actually human generated and giving those folks credit for that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yeah.
That's it for now.
Okay, just a couple more things. These are some real examples of conversations that have taken place in our community. So from a student's perspective, you know, part of it is just meeting other people. You would be shocked. And remember that the majority of the folks that we work with are adult learners. So they're over 25, they're doing a bunch of other stuff. You would be shocked at the number of posts that we get that say, hi, I'm just looking for to make some friends, or hey, is anyone out there that would be interested in, you know, a fun group around anime? I mean, like whatever interest it is. So, you know, it's always been this misconception, I think, that adult or online learners don't want or need peer relationships as part of their learning experience. Like we always thought, oh, they just want to get in and get out and they're too busy for all of that. But it's just not the case. And especially, I would say, since COVID, we have seen a huge shift in people's awareness or willingness to speak up about that. So the communities have these just really simple ways for people to introduce themselves and talk to one another and kind of find their people, right? Find people that are going through similar things to them, have similar goals and aspirations so they can team up. Part of that as well is this idea of students supporting students. I think absolutely the role of coaches and advisors in higher ed is critically important. And they play a huge role in helping students work through challenges. But there's something unique about hosting a problem or a worry and having a fellow student jump in and provide a response. It's like you get me on a different level because you're living and breathing the same thing that I am. And we see that again, time and time again in these spaces where students are just so positive and so powerful in supporting one another that it can be like the best part of your day to go into these communities in the morning and see what students have said to each other, and how positive they can be in helping each other work through some of these challenges. I think we don't have a slide on this, but I will say the other sort of obvious value for students is that they can find solutions to stuff. You know, I have a question, I think it's a dumb question. I can go into the community and probably somebody else has already asked that question. So I can find it, I realize it wasn't a dumb question, and I can get the answer that I had. Or maybe I didn't even know that I had that question. I go into the community and I see, oh, like I thought I knew that, but actually there was information there that I was lacking. So just creating a really easy place for students to go when they need it. And this is just a quote from University of North Texas, the woman that she's no longer with UNT, but was a great champion for us there. And now we're getting to work with her at her new university. So I'm really excited about it. But just again, going in there and seeing how students support one another is always very inspiring.
And I think we can say it's Indiana State because Lisa Stein is here. So,
okay, I mean,
yeah.
you
No, I think it's all I think it's all good, which new InScribe users who are excited to be rolling that out there, but Sam's terrific.
Yeah. And this kind of goes back to the idea of resources and sharing knowledge. But again, it's like getting advice from peers is a unique thing that online students just miss out on because of the nature of the way that they're learning. So like, let's just open up the doors for them to be able to talk to one another and give each other great advice as they go along. So that's on the student side, right? We're helping them feel better, we're encouraging them, they're supporting one another, but the institution obviously benefits as well. So Northern Arizona University, we didn't talk about them today, but one of our great partners who's been using InScribe, particularly around the onboarding process as students are coming into the university. And they had was it their advisors or coaches? I can't remember what term they used, but they were overwhelmed by students, like those first few weeks of school, the number of emails and questions that they were getting from students, they just could not keep up. So they moved all of that to this InScribe community, and it like was transformative in terms of the scale of their operations. Like the students loved it. The folks supporting the students had like some breathing room. And so that has been a really successful partnership for us as well. But that's really one of the benefits that you'll see. It actually will give you time back in your day. It's again, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I feel like I'm spamming the chat, but I did drop the link to a case study that we did with them as well.
Awesome. And this is like to circle all the way back to where we started when we were talking about these types of students. One of the core things was, how do we provide services asynchronously? And if you're an institution that has traditionally been delivering student support in person, that transition is not necessarily easy. Like all of a sudden students they have questions on Sunday evening, or, they don't know where to go to ask a question. And so InScribe not only simplifies that process for them, it simplifies it for the institution. Like, hey, this space is always on. Students can always go there. It's one place to go when they have a question, so they don't have to, overthink it. And it doesn't mean you have to staff the community 24/7. But if that question's already answered, think about that. Sunday night, 9 p.m., midnight, that student can find that solution and keep moving. And as you generate more knowledge in the community, more and more questions will be answered proactively. So it really is kind of a better way to help institutions make that transition to the 24/7 model. Oh, and then the last element, one of the last elements for institutions, is just the data. InScribe is a really unique data set. So of course, we're measuring things like engagement and how many posts and how many views, and all of that is really important. But the content itself is this window into what your students are really excited about or worried about or struggling with that you might not have any other way. So really leaning into what you can learn in these communities from your students and how that might impact changes that you make in other areas of the institution can be really great. We also have some automation in the platform where, if a student is particularly struggling, we can proactively identify that and alert you. So a couple of ways that we do that, but like primarily through sentiment analysis of the posts in the space. So how do we help you identify students who are in need? And then one of the features we're working on is to automate access to key support services on your side. So we identify that a student is struggling. Can we just pop up ability to like connect with a coach or schedule a session with a coach, or whatever makes sense for your institution? So again, helping you streamline that process a little bit.
You mentioned analytics, and I'm reminded of one of my administrator friends that likes to reach out and request our monthly analytics reporting. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about the services that InScribe provides on I think it might be quarterly. It's probably a quarterly report that we typically share.
I think it depends on the school. We've sort of moved to semesters, but anyway. Yes, great question. So we're talking here a little bit about feature set, more about outcomes for the institution. But one of the things I haven't talked about is one of the ways we help you get there is through your partnership with us. So we are one of those companies that the word vendor like makes my skin crawl. When you work with us, you are given a dedicated client success team member. That person is with you throughout the design and launch of your community, but then stays with you for the duration of your relationship with us. And you're meeting with that individual maybe weekly at first, moving to bi-weekly going forward, but their job is to be the expert in community health, in community design. So they will look at analytics with you on a regular basis, see if we're seeing what we thought we should, what we might want to tweak. And then quarterly or every semester, they're providing back to you a detailed analytics summary that sort of shows you where we started, where we've gone to, what were the goals that we stated for ourselves when we started this project, have we achieved those goals? and meeting with you to make sure we're set up for success for that next semester or that next quarter that we're leaning into. So we really believe that your satisfaction and your happiness with how the communities are going is also what's going to be our success. So we really will partner with you on that very deeply.
One more question. Sorry, I like
No.
around, but this comes up quite a bit. So how do you handle misinformation or negative post, inappropriate behavior? I know you talked about Rosie a little bit, but maybe you could address that as well.
Yeah, so I will start by saying the communities are not anonymous. A student's name and identity is tied to what they're posting in the space. And we really do not see bad behavior in these spaces. It's very, 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 very uncommon. It's also integrated into their, learning path. So I think students really do bring their best selves to these spaces. But we do have some tools in place in case things go off the rails. So I mentioned Rosie. So Rosie's looking for certain keywords. If that ever appears, Rosie will flag a post and let you know. If the motion of the post becomes quite negative, again, Rosie can identify that and let you know. But again, this is more useful in the context of, hey, I have a student that's struggling and I think maybe just needs me to reach out to them, than it is somebody behaving inappropriately in the space.
That's it. I would just recommend if anybody has any questions to please drop them in the chat so that we can answer them before the end of the session. I know we have some slides for Aaron as well.
I know. So now you don't have to listen to me talk for a minute. I'm going to welcome Aaron to the stage.
And he's going to unmute himself.
This is terrible. I can't believe I forgot to unclick the mute button. But I was saying, Katie, I share your disdain for the term vendor, and I think in my 20 years in ed tech, there are companies that are vendors. There are companies that have bought a lot of companies that their primary goal is how do we drive as much revenue from our customers as possible. Um, InScribe is funded by impact investors, a number of universities. We're very much focused on the long-term success and the relationships that we have with our clients. So I think to Katie's point, we are a company that really prides ourselves in the quality of our partnerships, the relationships that we have with our customers. So with that said, you'll forgive me for a couple slides that are more commercially related. But Danielle, if you go to the next slide. So when I'm thinking about, or when you're thinking about technology, I think there's a few questions that always come up. Does this actually work? And will students use it? And I think Katie did a great job sharing these case studies. Some of these logos you've already seen during this presentation, but when we look at across the board, the impact on retention, which, we've seen some schools that have been as high as 13% retention like UNT, but it's always significant. And when we talk about impacting belonging, particularly for non-traditional and online students, we've seen that at Rio Salado. And then we've seen strong impacts on academic outcomes at places like ASU and UMGC. So we're lucky to have clients that partner with us in tracking this data, but our impacts are real and well established. I think the other piece of this is we have a really strong history, and Katie spoke to this as well, but a really strong history on student adoption. So for the schools that use InScribe, our average adoption rate among students is 80 to 90%. Students find value in going into InScribe, and they keep coming back because of that experience. So that looks different for different students. It may be some students are lurkers. They're going to see what's going on in communities. They're going to look for information. Some are really active people that want to help their fellow students. I think for online learners, oftentimes these are the students that if they were on campus, maybe they'd be in student government or find other ways to give back. And then some students, particularly first year students or students that maybe don't have a lot of the social capital going into their educational experience may have a lot of questions in the beginning. Oftentimes, those are the students that become the ones that give back considerably over time, but it is quite a valuable asset for students, and our adoption rates show that. I think the other piece of this is how do I make the case internally? Um, InScribe is great technology. I think we do some amazing things, but when it's all said and done, and Danielle, if you go to the next slide, when it's all said and done, we're a tool that's allowing you to capitalize on what's already an amazing asset. That's your community, whether it's your faculty, staff, students, alumni, prospective students in some cases. We're putting those to work for you to drive really positive outcomes. So when we look at from a cost perspective, at most institutions, it really only takes a student or retaining a student or two to be able to pay for InScribe. Community colleges, maybe a few more, just given the funding model and tuition. But it is a really low cost as compared to impact. I know Danielle will send out a survey after we're done, and it'll give you an opportunity. If you do want to learn more, we're happy to provide pricing. We're happy to dig into what an InScribe community might look like at your institution and the amount of work involved in standing one up. So we're happy to continue that conversation with you one-on-one. So that's it from me. Katie, I gave you a little breather.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Clear my throat a little bit. So that we're really going to wrap up here. This is one other resource that we've put together that I think Danielle will drop into the chat. We had so many people asking about the design side of community building. So we put this guide together, and it's great strategies if you are thinking about embarking on a community journey. Whether you're using InScribe or not, it's just some best practices that you can think about in terms of how to get these going and how to help them thrive. We have a second version of this that's going to be coming out soon that is more focused on administrative. We did a big survey of administrators, especially in online, to understand what they're thinking about and what they're working on. So that'll look for that coming soon. And of course, we would love to stay connected. Danielle, you're going to drop the survey in the chat, or do you want to send that out after the?
You know what? It'll
webinar?
automatically populate when they leave the Zoom. So
okay, perfect.
It'll push them right to it.
But if nothing else, please connect with us on LinkedIn. Feel free to email me, of course, but I do a lot of my communication through LinkedIn. So look me up, say hello there, and we would absolutely love to help you achieve some of these same outcomes that our current partners are seeing.